this is Ryan, the OlyREI group. I have with us today Dion McNeeley of Tacoma, and YouTube sensation, Bigger Pockets guest. I think was it episode 448 or something like that. And you've kind of been all over the place. I think you said you're up to 18 or so doors right now. Investor who's happened to build a really good portfolio, become financially independent while working a W-2 job. And so it's been kind of impressive, and a lot of folks dream that they're wanting to do in real estate. So Dion, I really have been excited to talk to you for a long time. So I'd love to kind of, if you could give us just a brief introduction and kind of some things I might have missed on, just a little bit about yourself.
Sure, Ryan, thanks for the invitation. I'm actually flattered that any investors want to hear what I have to say, because I guarantee there's some people watching that have more units, that have better cash flow. My goal is to share the information with the average person who's trying to start out. And then the focus of this conversation today is how to get more mortgages when you have a bad debt to income ratio. And so the reason why I feel like that's a good subject for me to cover is in 2008, when I was a City of Tumwater police officer, the recession hit and most of the police department shrunk. And I went and drove a truck for a little while, was making good money, but then that company, Oak Harbor Freight Lines, went on strike. So that job went away. And I started working at commercial driver school as an instructor, making $17 an hour. I was a single parent with 3 kids. And during my divorce, I found out about $89,000 in bad debt in my name that I didn't know existed until the divorce. So I was starting from a really bad position. My brother had retired through rentals. He owns 10, 3 in California, 7 here in Washington. And he retired before 50, and he has the lifestyle that I thought wasn't even possible. Travels all over, has quads and side-by-sides and Sea-Doos, and does whatever he wants. And after losing the job as a police officer, I thought, well, maybe I'll try real estate. But he had a paid-off house, and he was taking out a home equity line of credit, buying mobile homes on acreage all over here in Washington, and then he would fix them up. Well, I was working full-time, raising 3 kids, didn't have an equity position in my house. I was upside down in my house. And Bigger Pockets really wasn't a thing yet. They had blogs, but no videos. Rich Dad, Poor Dad obviously was a book that got me started in thinking about assets instead of liabilities. And one of the first things I did was I thought I'll dip my toes in real estate, because I'm not sure if I can handle working, being a landlord, raising my kids. So I moved from my house into an apartment, and I rented out the house. And it did something that I didn't even actually expect at the time. And looking back, it sounds like I'm super smart, but it just worked out that way. When I rented out the house, my first tenant was a nightmare. I rented to a friend, all the mistakes you can imagine, like no lease, did it with a handshake. He was a single parent, so I understood his struggles. So when he didn't pay the rent, I let it slide, which made the rent later, and then eventually never. And when I went to the house to have a face-to-face conversation, he didn't even live there. He had moved out and rented the house to someone else and was collecting the rent. So it was like I made every mistake I could think of. But I started finding the Bigger Pockets blogs, and I kind of educated myself on how to get a lease, how to treat it like a business. Got a good tenant in the house. And when I started looking around for a place for me to buy, I realized, $17 an hour is not a very good income to qualify for a mortgage, especially when I already have a mortgage. But I had rental income on my taxes from renting out the house. So when I moved into that apartment, what I really didn't count on is claiming the rental income on my tax return was showing lenders that I knew how to get a lease, how to screen a tenant, place a tenant, collect rents from a tenant, maintain a property. So when I started looking around, originally I wanted to buy another single family house, and I thought I would use an owner occupied loan, live there for a year and move out, and continuously do that 8 or 9 times in 10 years and have a bunch of single family houses. But here in Washington, we all know, maybe you guys are finding them, but I have never found a single family house that cash flowed as a rental. Mine does, because I bought it in 2000 for like $100,000. It's worth $350 now, and I rent it out for $1,890 is what it's at now. So I paid $100,000 and rents out for $1,890. So I'm happy with how that house went. But no house since then have I seen that would cash flow that well. So I changed my strategy to small multifamily, and I focused on house hacking. I moved into one side of a duplex, was able to qualify for the loan because the duplex cost actually a little less than what the houses were costing in the area. And it's right here in Tacoma. I bought my first duplex. Rented out the other side, reduced my housing costs from $1,500 a month in the apartment down to I was covering about $300 of the mortgage in the duplex, which added to my savings rate. So the first step to getting lenders to allow me to have mortgages, even though I wasn't making much, and I started to make more money as it went time, is I've been here a little over 10 years now. I'm the president of the company and part owner. So my pay has definitely changed from $17 an hour to what it is now. But in those first few years, lenders would recognize 75% of rental income in a purchase in my debt to income ratio, which helped me offset the addition of another mortgage. As my debt to income ratio was hovering really close to that 43%, because I like conventional loans. I have a VA loan available, haven't used it. I can cover that reason if anybody wants. But I didn't use FHA because I wanted to be able to get rid of PMI eventually and without refinancing. And so that was the biggest difference between conventional and FHA is with conventional, as soon as you hit 22% equity, you can contact your lender and have PMI taken off. With FHA, you have to refinance. But for a lender to recognize rents of a property you're purchasing, the lenders that I talk with, and here in Washington, I work with Wells Fargo, about 3 mortgages through them, and then Fairway Mortgage has my other 4. They would only recognize rents once my portfolio started to grow if I had at least 3 months remaining on leases. So month-to-month leases didn't look as attractive to the lender. And it really confused me in the beginning because the lender was letting me make a 30-year commitment to buy a property if I had a 3-month commitment from a tenant. And the lender explained to me that when we're doing a loan, our money is made in the lending fees. We don't really care about the mortgage. We're going to sell it. And so far, every time except for my very last mortgage, the mortgage was sold within 2 days. I get an email instantly saying, hey, we're the new owner of your mortgage. So I understand that. So if you're looking at buying properties and you have tenants on month to month, which a lot of people are saying is the preferred method now because with COVID, you can't get rid of somebody that's on a lease, but you can choose to not renew or some reason why month to month seems more attractive. If your debt to income ratio is close, to me, at least year-long leases are more attractive because it's a lot easier to have 3 months remaining on a lease with a year-long lease, because with a month-to-month lease, you can never show that. So I've been able to scale up to 16 units. I just closed on my last duplex out in McKenna, which was units 15 and 16. I call that Suite 16. Ready to add the next one. It was really slow to start without making a lot of money. Saving took a long time. Between that first duplex and the next duplex was over 2 years. The first duplex I did with a 5% conventional, and lending fears change constantly. So usually whatever we hear currently, we think is the reality. So if people say lenders want 15% down for an owner occupied duplex, that's true. That's most lenders right now and this week. Next week, it can be completely different, and a different lender might have a different answer. I've heard of lenders doing 10% down. With FHA, it's always 3.5% for single family, duplex, triplex, or fourplex. But with conventional right now, lending fears are kind of high because of the pandemic. So they've said they want 15% down for owner occupied, 20% down if you're not going to live there. But I say they, and there's hundreds of lenders, maybe even thousands. I don't know how many are in the state. Each one is completely different. So one of the things that I do is anytime I get qualified to buy a property, I get pre-qualified with one lender, and then I make my offers on the properties. But once I have one accepted, I then check with at least 2 other lenders to see who's got the best current rate and can beat the fees. So I take the actual lender's offer in writing to the other lenders, and I let them see what the first one is offering. So far, almost every single one comes back with a better rate, or they can beat the fees, or they'll match the rate without doing a buy down, which was what happened on my last one. They said, oh, we'll match their interest rate and not charge you to buy down the points. But to be fair, I take those offers back to the original lender and give them a chance to keep my business. And all of the lenders I work with know that I do this. Like, this was a strategy I developed from a lender. She works, I'm not going to say where in case she gets in trouble, but she works in Lacey at a mortgage company. And she said, I can't go to my bosses and say, I want Dion to get a better rate. But if you bring me an offer in writing, I can take that offer to my bosses and say, we need to beat this rate to keep the business. So I've done that every time so far. And it confuses me when people say that that sounds like a lot of work, because it's really 4 or 5 emails. When we'll talk to 3 contractors about a $5,000 deck project, but we won't talk to 3 lenders about a $300,000 30-year commitment to a mortgage. So that's a basic idea of, I started with just a single family, grew slowly over 2 years to the next duplex, 2 years slowly scaled up to where now this thing called the Income Snowball kicks in. And if you're investors, you know what that is. Every time you purchase a cash flowing asset, as long as you can avoid life creep and don't just get a bigger RV, a bigger boat, a nicer truck, and a better vacation, you just keep adding the cash flow to the savings rate. I went from every couple of years to buy an investment to now I closed on one in November, closed on one in I think it was the end of May. It was just before June. And it's by August, I'll be ready to buy the next one. So I'm currently looking for the next small multifamily here in Washington. So the purpose of this talk was to talk about how a bad debt to income ratio can be overcome by getting rental income on your tax returns. But I'm completely open to questions. My goal is to share how I got to financial independence with everybody. And I'm trying to do it without making a course. I'm trying to do it without making a book that I have to sell. I have a YouTube channel. I got about 5,000 subscribers right now. I put out 3 videos a week. I try to cover the most common questions because I started commenting in books like the Real Estate Rookie Group or the Bigger Pockets Official Group, just trying to answer questions, which is kind of how I got on Bigger Pockets. The more questions you answer, the more known you are in the community, the more likely they are to bring you on. Mm-hmm. But I would get often the same question. So sometimes I would take a phone call. Somebody like Corey would reach out and say, hey, can we have a phone call really quick and talk about something? And I would say, absolutely. We'd have an hour-long phone call. But 10-hour-long phone calls in a week starts to look like a second job. So I started making videos. So if somebody calls and says, can we talk about house hacking? I'd like to explain that. And I just say, hey, here's a link to the video. If after this 10-minute video you still have a question, then let's have a conversation. So I still take phone calls. I met with a guy from Seattle yesterday. We went out here in Tacoma and the restaurant had shut down because it was too hot in the kitchen. So we had cold food, but I sat with him for an hour, hopefully walked him through. It's actually funny, and I'm somehow going to get it into a video in the next few weeks, but he moved to Seattle because the properties are cheaper than where he moved from. So all of us living in Washington think of where would you have to be coming from for Seattle to be the cheap place for you to move to. Well, let's open up the floor to questions.
Yeah, try to use the raise your hand thing or the messenger if you can, guys, so everyone's not chiming in at the same time. But no, so with what you're going with there, and Albert, I'd love to hear your input on kind of what a lender's perspective is. When someone's getting shopped like that, and how often do people do it? Is it a very rare occurrence? And in your shoes, do you think it's a good idea as a lender?
As a lender, huh? That's a different perspective. As an investor, yeah. As a lender, it sucks, but it is competition, and competition is what it is. So you have to bring your A game and figure out reasons why somebody will be willing to work with you beyond just price. So that's what I specialize in, is the beyond price, the tax planning. I'll work with your CPA. I'll calculate the before, the interim, meaning like when you buy the property, you've held it, what the debt to income is, and what it will look like once you raise your rents. Most lenders won't take the time to do that. And plus it takes, you have to know the guidelines pretty darn well too, because income is calculated differently, kind of like what Dion mentioned, is when you live in a property, your cash flow is sometimes not counted because it's considered roommate income. Even if you live in a fourplex and you got 3 other units, we can use the 3 other units, but the way we calculate it, I mean, I could do it here, but I don't want to put everyone to sleep. It's not very advantageous. But when you move out of that fourplex, you get to use all 4 units and you get to offset your mortgage. The offsetting aspect is the best, meaning like you could show positive income. So you could eventually, if you have enough positive income properties, you don't even need to work. Your properties could qualify you. I mean, assuming you had like 8 to 10K cash flow a month. Mm-hmm. Dion,
that's one of the mistakes a lot of new investors make in the conversation. I haven't seen it in actuality, is they go, I'm going to quit my job and invest in real estate. There goes that W-2, and they don't have the rent rolls coming in yet. And it sounds like Albert plays the long game. And that's really good when you find a lender that does that, because Spencer, my guy with Fairway Mortgage, the first couple mortgages he lost out on. He couldn't get the rates. He couldn't beat Wells Fargo. And he came back and he said, hey, look, I can't beat the rates. Hopefully we can work together in the future. But when you go back to Wells Fargo, this fee right here seems a bit high. Ask him about that one. And that stuck in my head. My last 4 more loans have been through Fairway. And he just got my business. he's been able to beat the rates too, but I've been trying to find a way to get my business back to a lender that was willing to help me, even though they weren't getting that specific sale.
Yeah, Albert, do you, when he's talking about being able to go and have them approach a manager or something like that with an offer in hand, are you able to, in that circumstance, request an exception on pricing?
I used to be at New American Funding. It's one of the lenders locally around here. They're kind of big in Tacoma and Bellevue. And yeah, you needed a competing loan estimate, or good faith, as they called it back in the day. Now they call it a loan estimate. Okay. They just made it, sound nicer, so they would be more appeasing to the ear. Loan estimate. So you got to bring that from Wells Fargo to ask the manager for a discount, because the manager needs backup to explain why they gave money away as well. As a broker, I mean, I could always lower my fee till pro bono, right? I could work for free, but the point is, there's only so much time in the day, and you have to figure out what you're good at. But that's me, right? Every lender or every broker or every bank has to figure out what their niche is. And I mean, ultimately, we can't be all things to all people. I mean, that's my opinion about it. But there are lenders who specialize in just the first-time buyers, so they're going to be leaner on rate. So if you needed somebody that's leaner on rate, you don't need skill, go to an internet lender, go to a first-time buyer lender, because they know they have to compete very aggressively with first-time buyers. Because first-time buyers don't know much, so they just focus on rate. And because if you knew how difficult the loan was when you have 5 or 6 or 7 rental properties, you understand why you need skill. But when you only have 1 property or 2, I'll be honest, you probably should get a better rate in the first 1 or 2. But by then I might be busy with somebody else, so I can't help you in the long game by then. But somebody who stayed with me in the beginning, I do treat loyalty much better. If they stayed with me in the beginning, I will definitely work. Even if it's a hard loan and it's like an 80 grand loan in the middle of Grays Harbor, I'll do it. I don't care, because I remember they stayed with me, So it's more like the honor system. That's how I work, though.
That's good. I like
Yeah,
it.
that's really important. File away the fact that our reputation sticks with us, and this is a small community. The name of the agent or the lender or the broker that you dealt with last year is going to show up on something in the future and have control over some deal that you want.
Not only that, I like to work with people that I would have a beer with, right? Like, so it's like someone you're going to need to see again, or someone you're going to do, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, that's part of it too, right? Because you control who you're working with on these things. So anyone here, I didn't see anything pop up in the messages. Does anybody have any questions they want to bounce off Dion or Albert or anybody else? It's like Bueller.
Could I pop in?
Yeah, absolutely, Corey.
So just for me, so I'm just starting out, right? And I have my current mortgage. I'm thinking I might sell this place, honestly, take equity from that and go get into a house hack. Where should I be looking at in terms of debt to income to be kind of prime for the ideal rates? And I mean, I guess that'd be more of an Albert question than a Dion question.
I mean, credit score wise, you probably want to be 740 plus, and that's much better than that.
I'm already better than that. That's fine.
Yeah. So you'd be good there. The pricing between 5% down and 25% down is actually the same on a purchase. So if you have good, I mean, other than having mortgage insurance, the rate wise I'm talking about is actually not different on conventional.
Okay.
So if you can bear the mortgage insurance, you might be able to just do 5% down on a single family.
And what's the current debt to income maxes or whatever?
Generally, like 45 to 50. So if you're making, for every dollar you make, you can borrow up to 50 cents of it. Said another way, if you make 10 grand, you can borrow 5 grand in payment, or 5 grand.
FHA or with conventional?
What's that?
Is that still with conventional, or does that make him go FHA?
Conventional. FHA actually is 56.5, 57, which is crazy, right? 57% of your income.
Yeah, that's crazy. I can't imagine using that much of my income. I mean, I guess on a property that's cash flowing, it makes a heck of a lot of sense.
What's crazier about that is going higher for someone that had less down payment in the first place. Like if it was someone
and a worse credit score.
Right, exactly.
Right. So
God
it's
bless America.
yeah. Hey, VA. We will talk about the VA loans too.
Well, come on, let's do that. Because Dion, I wanted to hear why you don't like your VA loan. Because I would love to have that in my back pocket. Just for
There's
fun.
two. Well, it's not that I don't like it, but there is a don't like it reason, and then there's a really like it reason. One is I like to maintain a good equity position, so I try to keep at least 30% equity. So when I buy a new place, the down payment needs to grow depending on where my portfolio is at to make sure I'm staying there. And if I did a 100% finance on a VA loan, then I don't have any equity in that place. And this last year, yeah, we had 16% appreciation, so that would be great. But that's not normal, and that's not going to be every year. But the second thing is, if anybody has a VA loan available, if you have the ability to save a down payment, your cash flow will be better, your equity position will be better. And someday, when you don't have the money for a down payment and you find the perfect, like, best deal ever pops up, you have the VA loan available. So if you don't have the down payment then, maybe that's the time you use it. So I'm keeping it in my back pocket because I'm able to keep saving up the down payments. But eventually, not today, but someday, I'm going to use the VA loan. I used it to make an offer a month ago on a $1.4 million ranch in Graham that had 37 acres and 3 buildings. And based on the 9 horse stalls in the 3 buildings, I was going to be able to live there rent-free on a 37-acre ranch. And somebody bid me by that much. And I didn't get it. So
that's cool. So you're looking for something like that? Like, is it specifically like a property like that, or just something that would also have income opportunity?
So I'm definitely looking for income opportunity. That was just a one-off. I didn't picture living on a ranch. So my next thing I'd like to find is another 4-plex. Like, I'm being paid $1,700 a month to live in the unit of my current 4-plex on just that one property. So if I could duplicate that again and then rent out the unit that I'm moving out of, I would do that every day.
I don't know if you could see Wendy's comment, but she doesn't apparently like I think the horses are a financial black hole is what I think she's saying.
Owning a horse, yes, but having 9 horse stalls that you rent out for $400 each every month, right, that are self-care, so I don't even have to feed or anything.
You got to make sure people come feed their horses, and there's a lot of insurance involved. Horses are a black hole of despair.
Yeah. What if these people like drop their horse off and then don't come and feed it?
Then I ride it and I feed it, and it's my horse. My brother does the horse stall thing.
Yeah, because they drop off the champion horses. Yes.
The perfect horse. Yes.
Yes.
Graham, right?
Yeah.
Can you repossess a horse? Put a lien on it?
Well, there's no tracking of it, really. I mean, and they're registered, but that race horses probably because they're insured, but and that kind of thing. But yeah.
Well, I have 2 horses that I donate to the Wounded Warrior Project. So they're basically cared for by the foundation. Yeah. And I go hang out with them once in a while. So they're technically mine, but you're right. If it was mine, it's like a boat.
Plus, you're dealing with horse people. And anyone who knows horse people know they are also a black hole of despair.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Who else has something for Dion? Dion, or if you want to talk to Wendy about horses, or maybe even Albert about the beach. But in side note, while I wait for questions, just a reminder, you guys, we are doing the happy hour thing at the distillery tomorrow. The new Heritage Distillery, new location. If you guys are, if you're available and in the area, we got Steve raised his hand. Cool, the raised hand feature worked. Let me see if I can do this. No, yes. Okay, Steve, I think that means you can just. There you go.
So my question for you, Dion, is you seem to like to have a large portion of equity in each of the properties. What portion is that, and why do you feel it needs to be, like, for instance, 30%? How does that benefit you?
Random number pulled out of the air.
Okay.
No. So in 2008, we saw a pretty significant drop in property values. If somebody had to, for whatever reason, absolutely had to sell, 30% or less equity, you were underwater. That's where I found myself. So that stuck in my head. But I'm a buy and hold forever person, so I don't plan on selling. And the thing that a lot of people don't mention is that in 2009 and 10, rents went up. So a market crash or correction is good for buy and hold investors if you're not selling. And I don't know the equity position on each property other than I have one paid off single family house. And my mind is very, very simple. Don't think math, don't think spreadsheet, don't think logic. I want a big gap between rental income and mortgage expense. The bigger I can keep that gap, the more financial freedom I have, the more wiggle room I have for somebody not to pay their rent, or a pandemic to hit and several months to happen where people don't have to pay and you can't evict them. Even though since my first tenant, I've never had one late or missing rent payment. I sleep like a baby because I maintain that good equity position. My portfolio, basically, I try to build it apocalypse proof. I'm ready for a prolonged government shutdown, a pandemic, a stock market crash. I diversify my locations. So I've got Tacoma, Spanaway, Yelm, Tumwater, Lacey, so that if Boeing moves away, I'm mildly impacted. If the base shuts down, we're all impacted, but I have, less than a third of my tenants are military, about a third are Section 8, about a third are working or retired. And the way to do that legally, because you can't run an ad saying, I only want Section 8 tenants in this house, or I only take military applications. When I have a unit open that I would like to keep my ratio right on military, go to MWR on JBLM, find out who's currently running their housing advertisements, advertise on base. You're not going to get a Section 8 or a retired person from the base. Maybe you can get a retired person there. But if I want to advertise to Section 8, I call the Housing Authority. I have much better luck with Thurston County Housing Authority than I do Pierce County Housing Authority. Very responsive, helped me find a tenant. I had a tenant within like 4 days placed in an opening out in Yelm when they opened that house up to the program.
What are so if I recall Section 8, I've never done one, but like I believe there's a metric for a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, that kind of thing, with like what they're willing to pay. What are, just as a off 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, or whatever it is you're doing, what's that doing on Section 8 in Thurston these days?
Thurston County 4-bedroom, $1,890. So it's a government agency. Some counties, if you're not in Thurston or Pierce County, it could be run by a nonprofit. So I'd have to check locally where you are. But it's an agency, just like a lender. I went to Thurston County and they said, we'll pay up to this much. So I showed them rental comps off of apartments.com, Rentometer, and somewhere else. But I showed it to them. I sent them. I said, this is what the comps would be. And they raised it up almost $150 from what they said that was their maximum. So it's a person working in an office that can justify anything as long as they have something in writing they can take to their boss and say, here's the comps that we based it off of. We wanted to do this. We had a person waiting for that type of unit to open up. So communication helps out a lot.
No, that's good. I've never even thought about trying to get them to bump a little bit.
But it is based on bedroom count. So they have a standard bedroom count. So if you have a garage or a pool or anything else, doesn't mean anything, just bedroom count. So a 1,000 square foot property or a 1,800 square foot property rents out exactly the same if it has the same number of bedrooms. So you have to explain to them based on comps of things that you find that are similar. Their current rate is only looking at the bedrooms. If you can justify other things, they won't pay extra for the garage or the pool. But if you could say it's larger and it compares to these, you have a better shot.
So are you going to stick with the small plexes, or are you starting to think about a little bigger unit count buildings?
One of my favorite videos is single family versus multifamily. And then my solution was small multifamily. And it's one of my ones where it's two of me arguing with myself. Mm-hmm. I don't like commercial loans. I think once I get to 10 in my own name, I'm probably done, and I'll focus and pay one off and then find another unit. So I'll scale slower at that point. I like 30-year fixed rate loans. I think almost all the problems that came up in 2008 happened from adjustable rate mortgages, interest rates changing, and the idea of a property's value being based on its NOI, your net operating income. So if you have a loan reevaluation period in a year where there's a pandemic and maybe you don't have some people renew their leases and you have some vacancies and the lender says, we're calling your loan, good luck finding it somewhere else. So you have to sell and you can be underwater. Like, all these nightmares come into my head. I invest for peace of mind, not for, I could have scaled faster. I could have used the Burr method. I could have flipped. I could have done all these things, but I just do really slow, save up a down payment, do buy and hold. So for me, I would prefer I had all 4 plexes because it does scale the fastest. But there are not very many in Washington that are like the one I got, that are side-by-side units. So you don't have tenants above or below another. Each unit has a garage. If I can find those, to me, that would be worth a lot more money than actually the high prices that we're seeing now.
Yeah, I wish I could have convinced my wife, or I tried to convince my wife back in the day about doing like a 4-plex and living in it and that kind of thing. once you start throwing in kids and a dog and all that stuff, and then, been in nice houses, it's just impossible.
So, I mean, we get used to what we're used to, but the way I justified it with myself is literally millions of families with kids and dogs live in apartments. This is an apartment, but you get to pick the neighbors.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's a good way to look at it. Anyone else? Steve, what's up?
I noticed that you have all your properties in Washington. You talked about geographic diversity. Is it because you self-manage, or is there a reason why you haven't gone out of state?
I do self-manage. I was looking at opening up a campus for a commercial driver school, the trucking school I run in Arizona. And when I did that, I was actually down there looking for small multifamily. I found small multifamily that would have cash flowed. I was getting ready to make several offers, and we couldn't find a location for the school. So I self-manage. So currently I'm only buying where I live.
How much longer are you thinking you're going to W-2
it? So I hear people say a lot, I love my job so much I would do it for free, right? We've probably seen that quote somewhere. I love my job so much, this is the only job I would ever do for money. It literally takes me about $30,000 a year to live. My rental profit after everything and setting aside for repairs and vacancy is about $103,000 a year. So my freedom number is 3 times what my actual FI number is right now, or my cash flow is. I don't see me quitting this job. I run a truck driving school where I get to play in trucks like they're like it's a go-kart. I get to help people find local driving jobs. We don't work with Swift or Sierra England or Prime or any of the over-the-road companies. And then I founded a nonprofit. You can see my shirt says TPS, which is Transportation Placement Services. So if you know anybody looking for a job, every single trucking company has HR, IT, operations, forklift, mechanic, all the non-driving jobs. We, for free, will help them find a job. And then I do YouTube and I help people find financial freedom. So I think the 3 things that I focus on, I literally get to get up every day and help people. I don't see why I would ever quit. I am going to change 1 month a year in Thailand to 3 months a year in Thailand or Colombia, or, geo arbitrage my vacation to up to 3 months a year. And the owners of the company, my partners, are completely okay with that.
That's awesome. That is really cool. And the guy who didn't type his name on there, I forget your name. What was the, you have a question?
Still muted.
There we go. Yeah, my name is Johannes. I live up in Tacoma. I'm finishing up my first rehab. I'm planning to rent it out soon. Right now, I have a little bit of work to be done, not a whole lot. I'm really struggling to find contractors. How do you recommend going about finding good contractors?
You want to find the Thumbtack app. And this is kind of like, I forget the name, Mary's List or something, but it's contractors who advertise on this app know that you're going to leave a review. So you get a quick response. You go on there and you say, hey, I need to have a water heater put in. And you'll get a bunch of emails in a few minutes of people that say, I'm in this area, this is what I would charge, this is what I recommend. It's almost like getting an estimate before you've done an on-site walkthrough with somebody. I would find a local REI meetup group like this and go in person and try to meet the other investors and find out who their handymen are, because I have 2. They work full-time jobs and I give them work whenever I have it, but I don't have enough to keep them busy. So my goal is to find people like you right here in Tacoma looking for a handyman, and then give you my guy Dave's contact number, and he does work, so he's not always available. So you want a few of those. But if you have handymen that are licensed so they can handle small projects, and it's not in the electric panel and it's not, something that, on the roof that needs a technical skill, use the handyman. But Thumbtack app for everything else. That's been my lifesaver. So like Russ said, love the app.
That's good. That's good. I had never even used that one. Let me see. Okay.
I haven't used it since Thursday. So
It's Thursday.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of mine from the ProDesk people, and they've been pretty much good. Most of them, 80%. So I used to ask them, who's coming in here buying materials at 6:59 a.m. Whoever's coming here at 6:59 is probably doing good work.
That's better than you going yourself at 6:59 and finding them, right? Now you can just.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right?
I like that. Yeah, just friend the ProDesk person. That's good.
Anybody feel free to email me for the contact of the handyman here in Tacoma. And he also works Thurston County too.
That's perfect.
Other words, I would put his name here, but I don't know who's going to be watching this in the future. So
Yeah. Oh, totally. I can agree with that. Plus, handyman. I mean, I'm sure you have a good relationship with that one. my reservation on something like that would be, what if that changes or my opinion of them changes in a year? Then, you know, people are getting all that, right?
Right. Yeah. You don't want to recommend somebody you haven't vetted, but this guy's been working for me for 4 or 5 years. He actually was an instructor at my school for a while too. So I know his work ethic and great work. I've had him do build projects where he, you know, actually does carpentry work. And then I've had him do simple things like the other day, he was working on a fan out in McKenna for me. So,
okay. So where you say, so you got McKenna, where else do you have your units?
Tacoma, Lakewood, and don't ever buy in Lakewood. Stupidest city ever. Some inspector comes out and says, there's a Disney light switch cover. You can't have that because they have to be uniform. And it's some 19-year-old that's never been trained in anything. You can tell by my voice, it was a frustration. But so that's the only place I might actually ever sell, just because it's in the city of Lakewood. Spanaway, the fourplex where I live now, McKenna, Tumwater, and Lacey.
Okay, awesome. Anyone else got anything for Dion? Nothing? Anybody? You can totally unmute yourself now, so we don't have to delay. There's only like, I think 9 people on. Anybody? Come on.
And everybody has my email. So if you have that question you didn't want to ask in an open format,
So
we just wanted to say thanks for the binder idea. That worked really well with our tenants, and she was completely receptive to it.
awesome. Would you do me a favor?
Yes.
Do the two of you feel like doing a short 10-minute video to cover that?
Oh, for sure.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Send it to that email.
Send me something on that email. Yeah, that would be
You got
awesome.
perfect.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Cool.
Perfect. And then, yeah, I was going to say, why don't you take a second, Dion, and just self-promote your YouTube channel.
That's the one thing I never try to do, is self-promote. But to answer questions, it's just Dion Talk Financial Freedom. I like to self-promote, or not self-promote. I like to promote One Rental at a Time with Michael Zuber. Great book, simple process, easy to reproduce. I keep copies at my desk. So I used to give out copies of Rich Dad Poor Dad when somebody would sit at my desk and go, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. And I'd go, here's this. That's mindset. There's no actionable steps. One rental at a time. Literally, when you meet somebody who's never gotten a rental, not made an offer yet, it walks you through. So I try to get his information out as much as I can.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, well, guys, if you have any last chance, I'm going to wrap this thing up here. And you know, I really appreciate you hopping on, Dion. You know,
So again, another beginner question, I guess. If you were starting out right now and you had, you know, plenty of money to borrow or whatever, would you start with a duplex, or would you start with try to go higher, triplex, quadplex?
If I was just starting out, the reason I focused on a duplex was I didn't have the large down payment. And it seems like the more units you add, the more cost you're adding. So the bigger even a 5% conventional down payment like I had back in the day, which it's really hard to find right now. So go FHA if you had to. Even 3.5% down of 600,000 starts to add up. But the more units, the better. With a duplex, most people are still paying a little bit. So you've reduced your housing expenses if you're going to house hack. With a fourplex, I'm being paid to live there. My triplex in Tumwater, I would be paid if I lived in one of those units too. 2 units of either of the 2 units is more than the mortgage payment. Larger is better if you have the ability to do it, but you do it right. Educate yourself, watch some videos, get a strong lease. Yeah, learn the systems beforehand. That's what I would have changed for myself. And realize that the second you make an offer on a property, you are a landlord. I rented out my house and didn't see myself as a landlord. I thought I was testing it out. So I didn't want to make a profit. I didn't want to have a lease. I resisted actually running it like a business. Huge mistake.
And where do you get your leases?
So email me. I'll send you a copy of mine. It's got like names and address X'd out. Originally, I got it from the Washington State Landlord Tenant Resource page on the official Washington site, but I haven't been able to find it. So I found it 3 or 4 years ago, made it, download it. I've got a copy, but I think someone at Washington State said we need to pull that for whatever reason.
Because now we're giving legal advice by giving someone a lease, probably, or something.
Probably, right. I share mine and I tell you, look, it's up to you. I would edit it. I have to add things like no water beds. Stuff that whatever you want for your property.
How frequently do you have your leases reviewed by legal consultation, like a lawyer?
Only had it reviewed once, and it was when I was breaking out the tenant care of maintenance, and I wanted to get the wording right on 8 feet or less, that no tenant should affect a tree that's taller than 8 feet so they don't get on a ladder or something. But since then, I haven't done it. I mean, if some big change happens again where, currently it's illegal to have rent control in Washington State, if that RCW is overturned like they're trying to do, then I'm going to have my leases looked at again.
Right.
That's a good point. I have a very important question. What's the significance of the map in the background? Is it, and where that is?
So if you ever do YouTube or you want to present constantly, I don't know if you noticed, but my voice sounds really soft. It doesn't sound canny and echoey. So towels and blankets on the floors, and then a map behind you so you don't have better acoustics. But you don't know if I'm at work. You don't know if I'm at home. You don't know if I'm traveling in Arizona. Like I did this in an RV one time, and I was like, yep, I'm just doing a video. But this is from a book series in Dungeons and Dragons. I'm actually a big nerd. I've got D&D dice sitting here on my desk that I use to give books away when I do my videos. There are swords and like big knives from different TV shows laying around here. So absolutely a nerd, and I own up to it.
Oh, that's good. I like that. All right, guys, last chance. Anything else? Going once.
I'm thoroughly honored that you guys took the time to come on here and listen to me today. Thank you.
Some feedback. I like that you mentioned, you want to reach 3 times your living expense, right? Your FI, you said.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is similarly based on that. It's a multiple of living expense, but the problem is, I have the lifestyle creep, so it it goes up, right? So then your ratio goes down because you increase your lifestyle.
Right. So when I work with people trying to get them to understand their freedom number right off the bat, most people they start guessing. I need a $10 million, or I need $1 million, or I need $5,000 a month, or some random number. But I take people through the exercise of looking at the last 3, 6, and 9 months, getting an overall average, and then growing that with inflation. So multiplying inflation of, it's normally 3%. We say it's going to be 9%. What's it going to take for you to do that? And that's one of the reasons why buy and hold real estate is good, because rents go up, mortgages stay the same. So you're actually compensating for that life creep that's going to happen. And if you're 3 times what it costs you to live now, you've got enough wiggle room to actually do the thing where you start enjoying life.
That's great.
That's nice.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you hopping on. I kind of feel like I'd met you before just because you've been all over the place, but I really wanted to get a chance to talk to you, man. It was great. Hopefully we can meet up again here in the not too distant future.
Cool. Somebody wants to come drive a fire truck around, lights and sirens, come play at our campuses. We're all over the place. We got one in Lacey, one in Lakewood, Port Orchard, Auburn. So.
Can I spray the hose?
Yeah, spray the hose.
Nice.
Bring your kids. Kids love the fire truck. It's weird.
They do. All right, man. Awesome. Thank you for hopping on, Dion. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you.